and we are a fee-based advisory firm. And in top of that, we also have certain corporate engagement activities also. One of them is obviously having seminars and webinars with different companies. We have tie up with approximately 250 odd corporates, and also at the same point of time, we have a customer database of more than 90,000 active customer base all across pan India. And I would be I will be presenting certain situations also. And this session will be divided into two parts, as the session definitely demands a certain amount of questions as well, which would be coming from your end. So the first 35, 40 odd minutes would be specifically related to the topics that are supposed to be covered. For the last 15, 20 odd minutes, we will be taking down all the questions across. Whatever questions that you have, there is a question and answer section which is on the left of your screen, if you can see that. So if you have any questions related to the topics which have been given, if you have any queries that you want to put across, you can definitely type in your questions, and we will try and keep it as concise as possible, and we'll try to answer all those questions that you have put across to us. So the host for the webinar today is Miss Akanksha Khaitan. She is a chartered accountant by profession. She has an overall experience of 4 years with Financial Hospital. She's been with 2 years handling the taxation part. So I will now hand over the responsibility of the webinar to Miss Akanksha Khaitan. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akanksha Khaitan. Today, I'm here to talk on the topic of basics of taxation. I'll also be giving you a little insight into the latest tax amendment that has come up, that is the new regime of taxation. So I'll give you a gist of that also along with the presentation. So the most basic thing under income tax is a person. So there are different types of persons under income tax. You and I belong to the category of individuals. Apart from individuals, there are companies, trusts, societies, and so on. So every person who derives income from 5 sources of income and they pay tax on that particular income is assessed to taxation. So every person who pays tax becomes an assessee. It's that simple. So there are mainly 5 sources of income. If I talk about the most basic one, so if I talk about the most basic one, it's salary income, which obviously all salaried people, they know about it. Apart from salary, there are other basic sources of 4 sources of income mainly. So there's business income, there's capital gain. So capital gain is nothing but the investments that you make, and when you sell off your investments, the gain that you make, it falls under the heading of capital gains. Apart from that, you've got house property income. So the rental income that you derive, it forms part of house property income and other sources. So other sources includes all other residual sources of income. For example, the interest on fixed deposits that you receive, even that forms part of your income from other sources. So to jot it down, there are mainly 5 sources of income, and I've discussed them. So the tax states that if I talk about individuals, there are the tax that you pay on your income is mainly divided into 2 parts. So one is the slab rate, which is pretty common for everyone. We all are aware about the tax rate, the slab rate that is applicable to individuals. So apart from a slab rate, there are certain incomes on which you pay a flat rate of taxation. I'll just give you one example to keep it simple. And the example is that suppose you've got equity shares and you hold it for more than 12 months. You sell off your equity shares after 12 months. Whatever gain that you make from that particular investment is taxed at a flat rate of 10%. So in that particular case, slab rate won't be applicable. Now, so if I move on to the next part, that is salary and TDS. We all are aware that we derive salary income, and for a salaried person, in maximum of the cases, you don't have to pay additional tax over and above your TDS. because it's your employer's responsibility to deduct TDS. That is, at source, they have to deduct tax and then pay you the net amount. So it's not your responsibility to pay tax, it's your employer's responsibility to collect tax on the salary income that you earn. Apart from that, there are two very basic terms, exemptions and deductions. I'm pretty sure all of you must have heard about these terms, but just to give you a gist about what exactly it is, exemptions, when I talk about exemptions, you all must be deriving, suppose if I talk about your provident fund, public provident fund, there are certain incomes which are exempted from taxation. That is, it's not taxable. You don't have to pay any tax on it. For example, public provident fund. So the interest that is there on the interest that you receive from public provident fund, it's exempted from taxation. Income tax says that you don't have to pay any tax on it. So that becomes your exemption. And deduction is nothing but it reduces your total taxable income. So whatever income that you earn, suppose you're earning 10 lakhs of income and you make certain investments, suppose 1 lakh investment you make under 80C. So whatever net income is there, your total income minus a deduction becomes your net income. So deduction is nothing but it reduces your taxable income, total taxable income that you earn during the year. So there are, I'm pretty sure I've used certain terms like 80C and other technical terms here. So I'll be elaborating them in the upcoming slides. So if moving on to the next slide, if I talk about salary, there are basic components under salary. So the most familiar one is basic salary. I'm pretty sure you all are familiar with the term basic salary. It forms part. It's visible in your salary slip. So there's no tax benefit per se applicable on basic salary because whatever forms part of your basic, it's completely taxable, and you can easily see it on your salary slip. Then there are allowances. These are nothing but over and above basic salary, you receive some extra benefits from your employers. So HRA, LTA is the most common one. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard about it and how is it calculated and what's the exact packing behind the exemption. I've explained in the next slide. But right now, I would just say that there are certain allowances that form part of your salary over and above your basic salary. And yes, some of the allowances are completely taxable, some are partially taxable, and some are exempted. So you can also see those allowances on your salary slip. So HRA, LTA, those of you who are availing the flexible benefit, they can see that particular component on your salary slip. Apart from that, you also get bonus from your employer. It can be half yearly bonus, annual bonus, or retention bonus that you get after a period of 2 years or 3 years. So even there's no tax benefit available on it. It's completely taxable in your hands. And yes, when the payout is done, when you receive the bonus, you can see that particular amount on your salary slip. Apart from that, there are retirement benefits. These are the terms which you're familiar with, but I'll elaborate a little on those terms. For example, provident fund, gratuity, superannuation, and NPS. These 4 terms are pretty common for everyone. I'll still elaborate a little. Provident fund, so mainly you as well as your employer, they both contribute towards the provident fund. So what you contribute towards the provident fund, it's available to you as a deduction under 80C. I hope I'm not getting too technical, but this is the basic of provident fund. Your employer, whatever your employer contributes above a certain limit, it becomes taxable. And you'll never see provident fund on your only your deduction you will see on your salary slip, but employer's contribution you will never see on your salary slip, because this particular amount, there's no payout involved when the employer is contributing. Only when the fund matures and you file an application with EPFO, you get the actual payout of provident fund. But you'll always see when you're joining an organization, they'll make provident fund a part of your CTC, because that's something that your employer contributes from its own pocket. So your employer also makes a contribution and you also make the contribution. Then moving on to the next part, that is gratuity. So again, it's another retirement benefit. It's something that you get on retirement from your organization, provided your organization is actually contributing towards the gratuity. So you'll see, you will, when the employer contributes, you do not find it as a part of your salary slip. But on retirement, you, whatever amount that you get from gratuity, due to gratuity, there's a limit of 20 lakhs that is tax free. So if you're getting 30 lakhs of gratuity, 20 lakhs would be tax free. And there's one more limit applicable, but we won't discuss that. Mainly, if you talk about gratuity, 20 lakhs would be exempt. And whatever you get on maturity, it forms part of your salary slip, because there's an actual payout involved, which your gratuity is something that your employer would pay to you. Then comes superannuation fund. It's another retirement benefit in the form of pension that's there. And again, when the employer is contributing, again, up to 1,50,000 per annum they contribute, there's exemption. Beyond 1,50,000, if they're contributing to superannuation fund on your behalf, it would become a part of your salary. And again, it will, when you're joining any organization, superannuation fund, if your employer is contributing towards it, it would form a part of your CTC. And yes, again, you won't see it on your salary slip, because there's no actual payout involved on per annum basis. They don't pay you superannuation fund annually. And NPS is the most highlighted investment option out there. So NPS is nothing but it's a deduction that's available to you. So your employer can contribute, and you can also contribute towards National Pension Fund. And whatever you contribute, it's available as a deduction. And whatever your employer also contributes, then that is available as a deduction. And again, it won't be visible on a salary slip, but it certainly forms part of your CTC, because it's a benefit that your employer is giving you. And if I talk about deductions, professional tax is something which is very common and which is deducted from your salary payout every month. And TDS, again, like I've already said, that your employer contributes your tax, and on per month basis, they deduct a certain amount as TDS from your salary and pay you out the net amount. So moving on to the next slide, HRA exemption. There's a HRA, first and foremost, very important thing is that HRA should form part of your allowance. I mean, this particular allowance should be visible on your salary slip. Only then can you claim any exemption against it. Now, how do you claim exemption? Suppose you're getting 1 lakh of HRA. So there are 3 limits in place. Out of that 1 lakh, a particular amount would be exempt, suppose 50,000, and only 50,000 net would be taxable. So how do you calculate the exemption? There are 3 limits. First is that 50% of your basic. I've already discussed what basic means in the earlier slide. Then this rent, HRA you claim when you're actually paying rent. You're staying on rented premises and you're paying rent. So only if you're paying rent, you can claim HRA. So whatever rent you're paying minus 10% of your basic salary. And the third limit is the actual HRA that you receive. So if there's no HRA mentioned on your salary slip, you cannot claim any exemption. So it's very important that you ensure that if you want to claim HRA, you talk to your employer and get the breakup. There should be a breakup of HRA on your slip. So these three are the limits. The least of whatever the least amount is out of 3 would be your exemption, and whatever remains after that would be taxable. Then comes leave travel allowance. So if you're incurring any expenditure on domestic travel, whatever expenditure, if you're going on any vacation and you're incurring any expenditure for yourself or your spouse, children, or dependent brother, sister, parents also, that particular amount would be, would reduce your leave travel allowance that you get. That is, it's available as an exemption to you. So the most important thing is it's just for domestic travel. And it's not like you can claim all the expenses, food and all, no. It's just for traveling. Only travel expenses can be claimed here. And one more thing is that out of 4 years, you can claim it just twice. So right now, there's a block of 18 to 21. That means out of 2018, 19, 20, and 21, you can claim LT exemption only twice. So if you've traveled 4 times, you can submit your expenses to your employer only twice. And this exemption is something that has to come from your employer. That means if you don't disclose this to your employer, you cannot claim it later on while filing your return. Only your employer can calculate the exemption and provide it to you in your Form 16. So suppose you're traveling by plane. So the economy class, up to economy class air ticket is available as exemption. So whatever, suppose you're traveling by business class, that won't be available to you. Only the equivalent fare for economic class would be available as an exemption. So if you're getting a leave travel allowance of suppose 2 lakhs from your employer, and you're incurring expenditure on traveling for 1 lakh. So 2 lakh minus 1 lakh, only the remaining 1 lakh would be taxable in your hands. Again, this has to come from your employer. If you forget to submit it to your employer, you cannot claim it later on. Similarly, for HRA, even if you do forget to disclose it to your employer, you can later on claim the allowance while filing the return. So moving on to the next slide. In case if you need more examples on these two allowances, you can put it forward in the question and answer section, and I can answer it later on. Even if you want some example, I can do it later on. So one of the most basic thing is that standard deduction. So whatever your salary, suppose you're earning a salary of 5 lakhs, there's a flat deduction of 50,000 from your salary that is available to you. So only 4 lakh 50 would be taxable, and then there are other allowances like I've already discussed, other exemptions like leave travel allowance, HRA, etc. Available over and above this 50,000. So 50 is something that is flat. You don't have to submit any expense. Your employer will give you this benefit without any proof or without any expense detail. Then TDS I've already explained to you in the previous slide. I would just say I'll just add one more thing to this, is that if you're earning some income apart from your salary income, suppose you've got interest on FD, or you've got any other sundry income like a small business income or tuition fees or anything, you should disclose that particular income to your employer so that they can deduct, they'll calculate your tax on entire annual income and they'll deduct tax at source. If you don't do that, what will happen is they've deducted tax on only your salary income. So when you're filing your return, and suppose you put in your salary income and then you put in your other source income from other sources like interest on FD or capital gains from shares, so you will have to pay additional tax on that income along with interest on that tax. So just make sure that you disclose your income properly to your employer so that they deduct it at source, and later on you do not have to bear any interest on taxes. Also, don't make additional disclosures to your employer because then they'll deduct less TDS. And again, you'll have to end up paying more taxes by filing return along with interest penalty provisions. So don't do that. And recognized provident fund, like I've already said, employer and employee both contribute towards it. Whatever you contribute, that would be a part of deduction under ATC. If your employer is contributing towards provident fund in excess of 12% of basic salary, so that excess amount will become part of your taxable income. So up to 12% if they're contributing, you don't have, it's exempt. But beyond 12% if they're contributing, your employer, it would form part of your salary income, taxable salary income. And whatever interest that accrues on that provident fund on annual basis in excess of 9.5%, up to 9.5%, that particular interest is exempt. But beyond 9.5%, that would be taxable in your hands. So so this is just a simple calculation of how your salary is calculated, salary income. I've just jotted down basic calculation. Salary I've already discussed, what your basic salary is there. Your allowances, only the taxable portion would be there while tax is calculated on your entire salary income. So HRA, not the entire HRA you receive would be here, only the taxable portion. Your HRA received minus the exempted portion, and the remaining amount would be included here. And taxable value of perquisites. Perquisite is nothing but something that is non-monetary. You get any non-monetary benefit from your employer, that forms part of your perquisite. For example, you've got any car benefit from your employer, they provide you with car. So there's a calculation which is in place, and that forms part of your perquisite. So allowances are monetary and perquisites are non-monetary. So then we derive gross salary. From that particular gross salary, there's deduction of professional tax and entertainment allowance, and then whatever net amount that's there, it becomes part of your income from salary. So the 5 sources that I discussed earlier, this is how one of the sources is calculated. The one which is applicable to us most, that is income from salary. I hope this is clear to you. So now that I've talked about income, I was emphasizing on the term deductions again and again. So these are some I've discussed just basic deductions that are available to you and which are relevant to you as a salaried individual. So there's ATC, which is quite common with everyone, and I can divide ATC deductions into three parts. Some are market-linked investments, some are debt investments, and some are related to expenses. So ELSS is nothing but your equity-linked savings scheme mutual fund, and there's a lock-in of 3 years that you cannot sell it off up to 3 years. Otherwise, the deduction that is there would be withdrawn. ULIP is nothing but unit-linked insurance plan. Again, it's a dual benefit plan wherein you get insurance also, and it's investment linked also. It's related to there are two elements. There's insurance element and there's mutual fund element where your the premium that you pay, a part of it is allocated to risk factor and a part of it is allocated to the investment portion, and it grows. So when you surrender the ULIP, whatever amount that you get on maturity, that particular amount would be linked to market growth. Debt investments, LIC is pretty common with everyone. There's term insurance also in place. There's PPF and Provident Fund, which we are very much aware of. There's a triple E fundamental in place where in case of PPF, whatever you invest, you get as a deduction. Whatever interest that you get is exempt, and whatever you get on maturity is again exempt. Apart from this, Sukanya Samriddhi is a recent investment tool available. You can do it for your girl child, and it's along the lines of PPF. The only thing is that you do it for your girl child. And there's 5-year term deposit. There's tax saving deposits that are there with banks. So you invest in those term deposits, you can get that particular amount as a deduction from your total taxable income. And if I talk about expenses, so the tuition fees that you pay for your children, if you've got a housing loan, whatever EMI that you pay, EMI contains two components, principal as well as interest. So whatever principal component that you pay for your, in your EMI, that gets reduced, that is available as a deduction under ATC. Then the stamp duty that you pay on registration of a property, that is available as a deduction. And term plan is nothing but term insurance plan that is there. It's a very lucrative option out there for if you don't want to. LICs are endowment plans, and term plan is something that you invest on annual basis, and then you get a lump sum amount on maturity, and that amount is quite bigger than what you get on maturity of LIC. So ATD is nothing but the health insurance premium that you pay. So normally you can pay it for yourself, your spouse also, and children, and additionally you can pay it for your parents also. So 25,000 each. So 50,000 is what you can get. But if any of you or your parents are more than 60, senior citizens, 60 years or above, so that limit gets enhanced to 50,000. So 50 plus 50. So 50 plus 50, 1 lakh is what the maximum benefit that you can avail, right? So if you suppose your parents do not have an insurance plan, medical insurance plan in place, or you also don't have, which is not common. Normally you would have an insurance plan, but this happens in case of your parents. If they do not have an insurance plan and you're incurring expenditure or their testings and all, that particular insurance plan. Similarly, for you also, if you're 60 years and above and you don't understand, above would be applicable. And if you're medically disabled, so you'll get a flat deduction of 75,000 from your total income, or 1,25,000, depending on the level of your disability. So there's no expense proof required, only certificate from government that you're medically disabled. And if you incur expenditure with specified diseases, you'll get a deduction from your income of up to 40,000 or 1 lakh, depending on your age. Now again, your expenses are required. So if you're incurring expenditure of 50,000 and you're less than 60 years of age, the deduction would be limited to 40,000. But in case you're incurring 30,000, you will get a deduction of 30,000 only, not 40,000. So it's the least of both. It depends on the amount of expenditure that you incur. And again, on the specified expenditure or specified diseases as well as medical disability, it can be claimed for you also and for your spouse, children, brother, sister, parents. You can claim for them also. Now, if you've got an education loan, so whatever interest that you pay on annual basis would be allowed as a deduction. So this particular interest amount would be over and above the limit of 80C, 1,50,000. That 1,50,000 plus the interest that you pay on education loan would be there as a deduction from your total income. But the condition is just for higher education. It's not for primary education, and it's available for first 8 years, not after that. So only during the first 8 years of payment, it's applicable as a deduction. So interest on house. Next one is interest on housing loan. It's for the first-time buyers, first-time home buyers. This is a recent amendment. So if you're first-time, if you don't have any house property and you're buying it for the first time, and you're taking loan between 2019 to 21, and plus your property value is it's up to 45 lakhs, you get a additional deduction of 1,50,000 under this particular section. So this deduction again is over and above 80C. It does not form part of 80C. So that 1,50,000 is there if you're investing, plus housing loan, interest on housing loan. Plus, apart from this 1,50,000, normal 2 lakh benefit that's always available for you on house property, that would be there. So total 3,50,000 would be available to you. And this again, the next one is again a recent amendment. If you've got an electric vehicle, interest, you can claim interest of up to 1,50,000 per annum from so this deduction is available from your taxable income again. And the only condition is that the loan should be taken between 2019 to 23. So if I, apart from the tax deduction tools that I've mentioned above, there are certain extra tools that could be used. For example, if you're donating to any charitable institution, that particular amount gets deducted from your taxable income. Now, ULIP, LIC term plans, whatever you invest under ULIP, LIC, that would be available as a deduction under 80C. Plus maturity proceeds. I'm talking about ULIP and LIC only. The maturity proceeds are exempt under section 10. So you get a maturity of asset in your hands, and the only condition is that the premium that you're paying on annual basis or lump sum premium that you're paying should not exceed 10% of your sum assured, the sum assured that you'll get. One more tax saving tip is that instead of FDs, you can invest in debt mutual funds, the liquid scheme, because even they invest, they go on and invest in those instruments that is there in case of banks also. So even they'll invest in debt instruments and they'll give you, in fact, more rate of interest. Plus on maturity, I mean the dividend received from debt mutual fund would be taxable. But maturity, whatever amount that you get from debt would be subject indexation benefit. So I guess debt mutual fund would be a better option than FDs. And apart from this, there's interest on housing loan, which you're very, very well aware of. So if you've got any housing loan and you're paying any interest on it, so whatever amount that you're paying, suppose you're paying interest of 3 lakhs on in this year, suppose. So up to 2 lakhs of interest that you pay gets set off against your all other income. So if you're earning salary of 10 lakhs and you're paying interest of suppose 1,50,000, so your 10 lakh minus 1,50,000. So 8,50,000 would reduce your taxable income by 1,50,000 there. So that's the benefit available for housing loan. And if your employer is not contributing to NPS, you can do that. You can invest just 50,000, and that 50,000 would be available as a deduction to you over and above the limit of 80C, 1,50,000. So we said that we were discussing with, the recent amendment that's there about the new regime of taxation that is for individuals and HFs. So the tax rates, I've compared the tax rates between the two. Up to 2.5 lakhs is the same under both the regimes. If your income, if suppose we'll take an example here, your income is 15 lakhs annually. So it gets, there would be a breakup as per the slab rate. Up to 2.5 lakhs of that 15 lakhs, there would be nil rate of tax. Between 2.5 to 5 lakhs, that is on next 2.5 lakhs, there would be a tax rate of 5%. Then on next 2.5 lakhs, there would be a tax rate of 20% as per old regime, but 10% as per new regime. Then on next 2 point, there would be again same tax rate under old regime, that is 20%, but under new regime, there would be 15% of taxation. Then again, next 2.5 lakhs, then as per new regime, but 40% tax for new regime, old regime 30%. And 15 lakhs and above, again, it's same for under both the regimes. It's 30%. So for a person earning 15 lakhs of income, this would be the breakup of their income and how it would be taxed. Over and above the tax I've mentioned earlier, there are two more things in place. One is surcharge. It's applicable for those who are on the under the high end bracket of taxation, who are earning more than 50 lakhs. So if you're earning more than 50 lakhs, but up to 1 crores, there's an additional tax rate of 10% applicable on your income. So if your tax is 1 lakh, additional 10%, that is 10,000 would be there. So 1 lakh 10 would become your tax. Similarly, if your income falls between 1 crore to 2 crores, suppose 1.5 crores, the entire tax would increase by 15%. If it falls between 2 to 5 crores, the entire income would be increased by 25% of surcharge. And beyond 5 crores, it would be increased by 37% of taxation, 37% of surcharge. So this is basically for those who are earning a lot and those who are under the high end of salary. And then there's rebate applicable. So this rebate is applicable. Suppose you're earning your total income is up to 5 lakhs, not a single rupee more than 5 lakhs. If your total income, that is your gross income minus the deductions available to you. So whatever net income that you receive, if it's up to 5 lakhs, you don't have to pay any tax at all. This is applicable for both the regimes. But even if your income increases by even 1 rupee beyond 5 lakhs, you not a single rebate, not a penny of rebate would be applicable to you. So entire 12,500 of rebate would go. And even surcharge and rebate both are applicable in both the regimes. This benefit is available, rebate benefit is available for only those people whose net income is up to 5 lakhs after deductions and after everything. Now, which regime? Now, to whom is the new regime applicable, and how to go about availing the option under new regime? So mainly, the new regime is applicable to individuals and HUF. And if you want to avail the new, new regime of taxation, you have to ensure that I can divide it into two categories. One, if you're having business income or you're not having. Suppose you're not having business income, any other business, you don't run any other business, and you're just a normal salaried person. So you can avail this option every year while you're filing the return or your income tax return. But if you're having business income and if you opt for tax regime this year, so you have to follow it every year. You cannot withdraw it. If you 2 years down the line, if you want to withdraw the taxation under new regime, you have to pay taxes as per the old regime again, and you can never again avail the option under new regime. So for those who don't earn business income, you can every year you can exercise the option. You can compare your tax liability under both the regimes, and whichever is beneficial to you, you can opt for that. Now, your employer would ask you about which regime will you opt for this particular year. See, this amendment is applicable for financial year 2021. So your employers will ask you in the month of April itself, or May maybe, that which regime do you want to opt for. So you have to disclose that particular regime to your employers, and as per the tax under that particular regime, they'll calculate your tax and they'll deduct TDS. Now, please note that once you disclose to your employer, there's no it's not that you cannot switch back to you can go back on the other regime. So suppose you're disclosing, you're disclosing to your employer that you will pay tax as per the new regime. But while filing return, you realize that no, the old regime is beneficial to you. You can avail the benefit of old regime. So there's no, you're not bound to disclose as per the you're not bound to pay tax as per the regime you disclose to your employer. So it's completely up to you. It's just for disclosure purpose, and you can later on change your decision while you're filing a return, and you can exercise this option on annual basis. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages? So, government has said that if you're opting for the new regime, you have to forego most of the deductions and exemptions that are available to you. So, the deductions that I had mentioned in the earlier slides, you'll have to forego most of those deductions. The advantage is that there's lower rate of taxation. If you have a rented house, if you own a house and you've given it on rent, so whatever income and that particular house is on loan, so the interest that you're paying on that loan that you've rented out to someone, that interest is allowed as a deduction. That was there in old regime also, and it will continue to be there in the new regime also. And earlier, you had to make investments to avail deductions. For example, in ELSS and all, you had to used to invest in those instruments to avail deduction. But now that under the new regime, you any which way won't get benefit of those deductions. So you don't have to invest under those deductions, and you can instead invest in something which gives you better growth option. And retirement benefits, the gratuity, provident fund, treatment of superannuation fund, all the exemptions that were there on retirement that you used to get, it will remain same. So the benefit of 20 lakhs, one example is that gratuity, if on maturity, if up to 20 lakhs was exempt, still there in the new regime also. So taxation of maturity of retirement benefits remains same. Disadvantages are that, like I said, you have to forego deductions. So the flat deduction of 50,000 that you used to get, you have to forego that. You cannot set off losses. Suppose you had a house property loss of previous year and you're carrying it forward in this year. You cannot set off that loss against your income. You cannot file a belated return. You have to file your return within the due date, and you have to forego almost all the deductions: ATC deduction, your Mediclaim deduction, your education loan deduction, charitable donation to charitable institution, everything you have to forego. And one of the major deductions that you have to forego is the interest that you pay on your own property. The property you own and it's on loan, so you have to, whatever interest that you pay, that particular amount won't be available as a deduction from your taxable income. So that is one of the major disadvantages, this and the fact that you cannot claim ATC and other benefits. Now, this I've already discussed. I mean, whatever I said in the previous slide, this is just a gist of that slide itself. So there's a change in the basic salary. HRA, again, the exemption that I discussed earlier, the calculation that was there. As per old regime, you can avail the benefit of exemption, but new regime, no, you have to forego it. LTA, again, old regime, the exemption is available, but new regime, no, it's not available. There are other allowances like traveling, uniform allowances, which are exempt up to the expenses that you incur, actual expense that you incur. So again, under new regime, it's not available. Now, your contribution to Provident Fund, which was available under ATC, again, under old regime, it was there, but new regime, you have to give it up. If I talk about NPS also, whatever your employer used to contribute, that particular amount was available as deduction. Beyond 1,50,000 amount of ATC, it was there. And under new regime also, it's there. So this is one of the highlighted points, that it's there in both the regimes. Other allowances, again, if it was taxable under old regime, it would be continue to be taxable under new regime as well. So interest on housing loan, like I've already discussed in the previous slide, under old regime, up to 2 lakh you used to get as a benefit, and it used to reduce your taxable income if you had a housing loan on your own property. But under new regime, you have to forego that deduction. insurance policy, tuition fees, etc. under ETC that you used to claim, it was there in the old regime, but it's not there in the new regime. And medical insurance you pay for yourself, or medical expenses for self or parents, you used to claim deduction in the old regime. It's not there in the new regime. And retirement benefits, I've already said that the treatment of gratuity, superannuation, leave encashment, the exemption calculation under both the regimes remain the same. Whatever you get on maturity, whatever calculation was there as per existing laws, it's there. It continues to be there in the new law also. Now, it's just an illustration of with certain conditions. I've put down 3 scenarios here. So, first scenario is that suppose you have a habit of saving a lot under ATC. So, your limit of 1,50,000 is fulfilled. Suppose you have invested in ELSS, PPF, etc. up to 1,50,000, plus you incur cost for your house. That is, suppose you're paying rent, so you're claiming HRA, or your house is on loan, so you're claiming interest deduction. So that again 2 lakh benefit is available to you. So I'm assuming up to 2 lakhs you're claiming. So 1,50,000 plus 2 lakh plus you're investing under NPS 50,000. So total benefits available to you, deductions and all available to you under old regime would be 4 lakhs. Now, if you're opting for new regime, you have to forego all of those deductions and zero deduction would be available. So if your income level is 5 lakhs and you have a deduction of 4 lakhs, as per both the regimes, you don't have to pay tax. Suppose your income level is 7,50,000 and your deduction, like I've already said, is 4 lakhs. So again, under old regime, you don't have to pay any tax because rebate will come into picture here. 7,50,000 minus 4 lakhs would be 3,50,000, and then up to 5 lakhs, like I've already said, there would be rebate, no tax at all. But under new regime, since no deduction is available, you'll end up paying 39,000. So here we can clearly see that if you're investing a lot, you have a habit of saving a lot, and you've got you incur cost for your house, so your old regime would be beneficial, new regime would not be beneficial to you. Beyond 15 lakhs, again, the benefit available under old regime would be constant. 46,800 is what you will get as a benefit. So here, in this scenario, old regime is beneficial to you. In this scenario, I'm assuming that you have a habit of investing, but you don't incur cost for your house. You live in your own house. So either with the parents or your own house. So you don't pay rent, you don't have a loan on your house. You just make an additional NPS investment. Total deductions here comes down to 2 lakhs. So in case of this particular scenario, again, as and when your income increases, in the initial level up to from 5 to 10 lakhs, you can clearly see that old regime is beneficial. Tax as per old regime is beneficial to you. But as your income increases, 12,50,000, at 12,50,000, at 15 lakhs, at 2 lakhs, at these 3 levels, you can see that new regime is beneficial to you. So, like I'm again repeating my point here, if you have a habit of saving a lot under ATC, and you've got interest in housing loan, etc. So definitely your old regime would be a better option for you. But if you don't save a lot, which is there in, I'll come to the next slide, which is the life example of for a person who does not save much, who doesn't invest in ATC, and I'm assuming he just makes an investment of 50,000 under NPS. So just 50,000 reduction is there for him. So for that particular person, you can see all the calculations at first 2 income levels. Both the regimes tax is at par. But for the next level, as the income level keeps increasing, you can see that old regime turns out to be, you end up paying more tax under old regime, but new regime would be taxable. New regime would be more to you because you have a habit of, you're not investing much, you're not availing much deductions. So this new regime would be beneficial for those who do not have a habit of investing. So I hope this is pretty clear to you. Now, apart from, if I talk about other few more tax saving tips that I can emphasize on are stated here. So even if you want to claim HRA and you're staying with your parents, you can pay rent to your parents and you can claim HRA exemption. So you just need to do it legally. You need to draw up a rent agreement. You need to paid through digital mode, and you're good to go. So the next one, so if I talk about most important thing is that if you're claiming any exemption that I've already explained before, if you're claiming any exemption against allowances like HRA, LTA, just make sure that it's there in a salary slip, or you won't be able to claim any of the exemptions mentioned earlier. If you're suppose you want to claim deduction of housing loan of 2 lakhs as mentioned earlier. So if you don't have a loan from bank or maybe your financial institution, you can also take loan from your parents and pay interest to them, and you can still claim interest on housing loan benefit. And if you're taking housing loan, you can take it in joint name with your spouse, so that the benefit of 2 lakhs is available to each of you. So total 4 lakhs would be available as a couple. Any gift that you receive on your, so if you're receiving any gift on tax on marriage or inheritance, you can make sure that if suppose your the tax bracket of your spouse is low, so you can ensure that that amount gets transferred to your spouse, and then she goes on and invests in any of the investment tools. So whatever you get on your marriage or inheritance, it's completely tax free in your hand or in your spouse's hand. Depending on inheritance, it can be for yourself, or your spouse might inherit something. But in case of marriage, you can, depending on the tax bracket, you can ensure it's transferred to that person whose tax bracket is low. The amount that you receive won't be taxable, but the amount that you invest and income that you derive on it would be taxable. So this would be one tax saving tool. And just to ensure one thing, I'm not sure whether you're aware of this or not. If you're transferring any amount to your wife's account, and suppose you're transferring 1 lakh, and she goes on and invests that 1 lakh in something, suppose FD, she makes FD of 1 lakh. Whatever interest that she gets on that FD would be actually taxable in your hands and not your wife's hand. So that is called clubbing of income. So just make sure that if you're transferring anything to your wife, she invests in some tax-free instrument, so that if that income that she earns is even accruing on annual basis, and it gets clubbed in your hands, it's any which way tax free. So you don't have to pay any additional tax. So these were some additional tax saving tips from my end, and with that, I've come towards the end of the presentation. I will just give you a brief about Minty. So we have an application in place where you can connect with our experts, and if you've got any tax queries or any wealth or financial queries, you can put forth those queries on that app, and you can connect with our experts on real-time basis, and they'll provide you with the solution. This particular app is there on the App Store, so you can download it and you can try it out. And it's we provide with advisory, and we'll resolve the queries on various topics like retirement planning, financial planning, health insurance, income tax return filing, etc., will planning. And like I've already said that Manoj had already said during the start of the presentation that we provide with investment tips also, investment platform also. So we've got another application as well as website, Fit2, where you can it provides you with a platform to manage your portfolio on real-time basis. So you can give it a try. You can use that as well. So with that, I hope I come towards the end of the presentation, and we'll take a few question and answers raised by the audience. So I'll ask Manoj to read out the questions that were raised.
Thank you, Akansha, for the insightful session. There are a few questions which have come across by the audience. Going back to the questions related to the HRA, could you just give some bit of more explanation about the HRA? I mean to say, how many examples can we take on HRA, and how do you claim HRA?
Okay, so I'll have to put forth few assumptions if I want to calculate HRA benefit. So if you've got a pen and paper, maybe you can also jot down these these calculations. Suppose you have a basic salary of 10 lakhs. You're receiving HRA of 5 lakhs from your employer. then you're paying rent of suppose 7 lakhs. Okay, so I've already mentioned there are 3 calculations in place. First limit is that 50%, I'm assuming you're staying in Mumbai, so 50% of basic is the first limit. Basic, like I've already said, is 10 lakhs. 50% of 10 lakhs comes down to 5 lakh. So 5 lakh is the first limit. Second limit is rent that you pay in excess of 10% of salary. So the rent you're paying, I've said, is 7 lakhs minus 10% of your basic is 10% of 10 lakhs, that is 1 lakh. So the second limit comes down to 6 lakhs. Third limit is the HRA that you actually receive from your employer, that's there on your salary slip, that is 5 lakhs. So the 3 limits that I've come down to are 5 lakh, 6 lakh and 5 lakhs. The least of these 3 would be available as an exemption. So 5 lakhs is the least amount out of 3. So the HRA that you're receiving is 5 lakh and exemption available to you is also 5 lakhs. That is how HRA exemption is calculated.
Okay, another question that we have is Mr. Ramesh Babu has asked this question. He has salary income and business income. So, which regime is beneficial for him? Could you please answer?
For this again, my first question would be whether you have a habit of saving under 80C and you've got other deductions in place. So suppose if you're not doing that, if you are not investing under 80C and all, so new regime would be more beneficial to you. But you can still give me exact income range with deductions later on. You can mail or you can put forward the details. I can calculate and get back to you. But prima facie, new regime would be beneficial to you if you're not investing a lot.
Okay, Mr. Ramesh Babu has asked once again, his total income is more than 15 lakhs and he's paying housing loan interest more than 2 lakhs. Is that possibility?
15 lakhs and 2 lakhs. And what about 80C investments? If I'm assuming 1 lakh is what you're investing, old regime would be beneficial to you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
beyond
Sorry.
15 lakhs and above, for people who are earning 15 lakhs and above, there's a break-even limit of 2.5 lakhs, which means that if your total deductions are up to 2.5 lakhs, including everything, ETC, interest and housing loan and everything, if it's up to 2.5 lakhs, then you're at par under both the regimes. Same tax you have to pay. If your deductions are more than 2 lakh 50, old regime is beneficial. If it's less than 2 lakh 50, new regime is beneficial.
Mr. Vicky has a question. Can he pay rent to his mother and also claim HRA, pay Mediclaim premium for his parents, senior citizens obviously, and claim deduction for Mediclaim? Is that a possibility, Akansha?
Yes, you can do that. Like I've already said, see, if I talk about medical premium, the section itself says that if you're paying it for your parents, you get an additional deduction of 25,000, and if they are senior citizens, that is 60 years of above, that limit gets enhanced to 50,000. So you'll get deduction for your medical premium plus 50,000 for them also. And if I talk about HRA, you can pay rent to your parents. The only thing is that you need to have a legal document in place. You need to pay them rent digitally. Plus, whatever rent they receive, they have to disclose it as their income in their return. Then you can claim HRA.
Okay, very interesting question. If house rent is below 7,000, so in that case, a rent slip is required or not?
So normally, see, this question depends on your employer actually. It depends on the HR. So what happens is if you're paying annual rent of up to 1 lakh, normally your HR doesn't ask for any of the documents. So that would be subjective. It would depend on your HR, what they're asking for. Income tax doesn't ask for documents, but your HR will ask for documents.
Okay. Also, there is another interesting question. Can I get tax benefits on home repairing or a second home loan?
Tax benefit on?
Tax benefit on home repair in case if you're taking home repair and you're taking a loan for it or a second home loan. So can he get a tax benefit on it?
Yes, it's there available. It's available, but there's a limit of around 30,000 on it. So limit of 2 lakhs is not applicable on that. On repairs, renovation, and all, the limit is really less.
There is another question. Can one pay rent to wife and get exemption?
So is my question here would be whether your wife is the legal owner of the house. So if when I'm saying that you can pay rent to your parents or your spouse, the first condition is that they should be the legal owner of the house. Only then they can rent it out to you. So if she's the owner of the house and you're paying it to her, then you're good to go. But if she's not the owner, you cannot pay rent to her.
There is another question. Can we get 5,000 benefit under ATD for self and parents both?
5,000 benefit. If you're talking about
Yeah.
preventive health checkup, then yes,
Yeah.
it's available for you as well as for your parents. But it's there in the overall limit, like 5 plus 5 you'll get. So it's there. It's for medical preventive health checkup is nothing but the test that's there, like CBC test and all that you go for. So you can claim 5,000 benefit there. Hello.
Yeah, we've got one more question. If a person and his wife are joint owners, can I claim 50% rent?
Joint owners 50% rent. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do that. So again, if I talk about this, this is a matter of litigation. But normally, suppose you both have invested equal funds towards the property, and the loan that you've taken, you're servicing equal amounts towards that particular loan. Then you can, whatever rent that you're getting from that property, you can claim 50% each in your return.
Great. Again, related to the salary, a person has 9 lakh rupees package, but no investment, absolutely no investment in ATC. So, as suggested, which regime would be better for him, the old one or the new one?
7 lakh 50.
9 lakhs.
Sorry, 9 lakh is the investment and no investments at all.
9 lakh is the package, annual CTC, but he hasn't made any investments in ATC. So, I mean, say zero investments, if I can consider that. So, which regime would be beneficial for the person?
New regime. New regime would
regime.
be beneficial, yes.
Okay. And under Ayurveda, can we consider preventive health checkup? Does Ayurveda come under preventive health checkup also?
Yes, it would come. The only thing is that whatever you're claiming for preventive health checkup, just make sure that you have any document in place. So 5,000 is not a big amount. Income tax won't ask you much about it, but then still, to be on safer side, you can have a document in place, whatever expense you're incurring.
So if we have to take another question, what is the maximum amount of tax relaxation a person would get in new regime?
I didn't get the question. Maximum amount of tax relaxation.
Yeah, in the new regime.
70,000 is what the maximum benefit is there.
Okay. In respect to the questions and answers, we have all these questions being answered in the Minty application. I hope that you go and download it, the Minty application. And we have investment advisors, we have financial advisors, we have, CAs who can go ahead and answer your questions in case if you have any of them. Plus, the presentation has also been shared with Mr. Nikhil Gaikwad, and whoever whoever requires the presentation, they can take it from him. And in terms of any questions that you may have, in terms of any investments that you wish to make, it can start from a small SIP also. You can visit our platform, which is by the name of Finto. So it's an online platform for your mutual funds. So you can check whatever as per your risk profile, you can adjust and make investments out over there. So do have in and have a look onto those packages and on our website as well. So we have one more question out over here. Person's salary package is 18 lakhs and child tuition fee is 10 lakhs and sister is 80 DD 12 lakh 50,000. Sorry, 1 lakh 25,000. So parents' insurance is approximately 28,000 and his own insurance is 16,000. So ideally, if you can just give us a bit clarity about how to go about seeing the entire funds, how could he go ahead and make such adjustment?
So tuition fees that you're paying, it's available under ATC.
Okay.
DD is over and above 1 lakh. Again, 1 lakh plus 1 lakh 25,000, that would be 2 lakh 25,000. Plus the insurance that you pay for your parents, 28,000. I'm assuming they're senior citizens, so entire 28,000 would be there. Plus 16,000 for self, so 40,000 would be available to you. So 2 lakh 25 plus 40,000. The 2 lakh 65 is the total deduction available to you, and you should go for the old regime, not the new regime. So old regime would be beneficial to this person.
Okay, thank you, Akansha. I hope everyone has got the clarity on the presentation. I hope it was beneficial for each and every one of you all. Thank you for so much for attending the webinar. We wish to help you guys again in the future as well. And thank you once again for being on the presentation and the seminar. Thank you, Akansha, once again.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.